The audio was not sending. So you're live now.
Here we go.
Oh, well, look at that. Because Miles is an idiot. Here we go.
Okay.
Now we can hear you.
All right. Awesome.
I just like being a glutton for punishment.
All right. So, Spino, why don't you take it away with some of the local stuff that we have?
Technical difficulties resolved.
Yes.
Okay, well, this is something I discovered, a program being offered at UCO, the University of Central Oklahoma in Edmond, and it's called Micro Credentials.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a university offering micro credentials. What, pray tell, is a micro credential? Let me answer. Basically, if you've taken one of these short-term classes, which of course you have to pay for,
Mm-hmm.
or someone's going to pay for it,
Mm-hmm.
if you complete this training that they offer, non-specific as it may be, you get a badge, a digital badge, like you're playing Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And these badges you can attach to your social media profile, to your resume. And what it lets prospective employers and all your friends know is that you have been trained up specifically in one of these fields.
Mm-hmm.
So we started looking into this, UCO, and we're going to post links to all of this on the Project 46 website.
Mm-hmm.
Guarantee you that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why register for a micro-credential, asks UCO, and then UCO answers. Gain knowledge and expertise on your desired subject from UCO professors who have crafted these micro-credentials through experience and education.
Mm-hmm.
You choose what you learn. And it goes on. It's a bunch of BS just kind of selling this program. Now, these are the micro-credential offerings, and they're probably, I'm going to ballpark, 25. May I share some of these with you?
Yes.
Okay. Diversity and inclusion event planning and logistics. Diversity and inclusion public speaking. Diversity Leadership Institute. Diversity peer educator. Now, they also have sprinkled in modular synthesis 1, professional networking, cyber operations, some really, technical certifications that would actually be applied toward a technical skill of a job. But even within those, they're peppered with the language of the diversity, the equity, the inclusion. Okay, so anyway, not to hog the mic, because if you let me do so, I'm never going to stop. Okay, so here we go. Here is among the offerings, the Diversity Leadership Institute. Okay? Diversity Leadership Institute, DLI, offers a transformative learning experience as participants view the concepts of race, culture, privilege, bias, prejudice, and discrimination through the lens of lived experience. Okay? So it's the same jargon. And if someone's using woke jargon, you see the woke jargon, you know that it's woke. So anyway, what can you do with this micro credential? UCO asks, and then UCO answers. Learn the importance of communicating with peers who come from different lived experiences. And relate to those, as well as how social and cultural identities shape larger goals and ideals. Okay. Here is the next one, which is transforming justice leadership in the community, micro credential. Analyze policies using a social change framework. Describe the foundations of justice within diverse social systems and structures. Lead social change. All of these, almost all of them, are like a call to activism.
Yep.
What is the activism? They don't specify what they're supposed to be advocating for. Anyway, I bring all this up. Those, for the two people who are still listening to me talking, is that it's a scam on a couple different levels. Number one, it is the educational industrial complex.
Absolutely.
Just keep coming back, keep feeding the beast.
Yep.
What, you don't have your inclusive diversity equity training badge? Get the hell out of here. So
Interesting.
so you get these badges, like like you're in the Boy Scouts, and you show them off to people. And to me, I think really what this portends is if it's not here already, the soon-to-be omnipresent social media score.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm done blathering. Please, you two, share your thoughts. Get me out of this.
Go ahead, Daryl.
Well, believe it or not, I have an opinion. This is clearly a way to monetize and value your ESG score. This is to set up your ESG Equifax score, if you will. I think Andrew's right on the head on this thing, as far as you don't have this special little merit badge be offered through baloney force. I guess just can't anything. And I wonder of these, after 23 years of study at 5 universities, I wonder how many of these merit badges I'm going to have to stack up just to keep going to work, feeding my family. This is all a crap. I can't even say what this is unless we blow our rating for this show. But this is absolute garbage. And I don't know what's funnier, the nonsense that they pour into these programs, or the fact that there are people stupid enough to insist that they have to pay their money to get these things. I don't know what's dumber, honestly.
Oh, and you go on the website, I knew nothing about micro certification, or it was certification?
I believe so.
Micro-credentialing.
Credentialing.
Credentialing. Thank you. Micro-credentialing is I was looking around online, is there any critique of this? And there's none. And more universities are offering it. From what I could tell, UCO is the first and only in Oklahoma to offer this. Do we have a technical issue? Oh, I guess everything's fine. But the push for this, like you were saying, to complement, I kept calling it a social media score. I think it's social credit score. Is that the term?
Social credit.
ESG score. It basically is a litmus test of whether you're going to be accepted into society. I'm done. Janelle?
I have to agree. We were talking before the show. We were saying how, this is really kind of the epitome of the, the participation trophy generation, right? Where it's like, well, here you can take this class and now you're someone and have standing, which is kind of scary because there are going to be those people that, Daryl referred to, those, very non-critical thinking people that are going to go and they're going to be a part of this program, even right here in Oklahoma. Maybe they will do the applied critical thinking class that they have under the micro-credential offerings. I don't know.
but those are the ones that I read where they snuck in a little bit.
Yeah.
You're supposed to take your critical thinking skills to advocate for social justice issues. But you look on all these education websites at these universities.
Yeah.
And, what is micro-credentialing? If you look on any of these universities, their explanation is a sales pitch.
Mm-hmm.
They are really hammering you, trying to get you to sign up, get your money, get on board with this nonsense. The fact that it's come to Oklahoma, where a lot of people think this stuff can't happen in Oklahoma, and the reddest of
That's a good point, yeah.
Edmond is a remarkably conservative, predominantly Republican community. The taxpayers who make the university possible are largely conservative, yet we have this kind of thing that we're paying to make happen.
Exactly.
Share the outrage with me, would you, people?
Daryl, you're shaking your head over there.
This just further illustrates what I've been saying for a long time, which is Oklahoma is a battleground state. And unfortunately, it's a battle between common sense and the galactic stupid. So what we need to do is we can't just not participate in this nonsense. There has to be a way that we can, as Rush used to say, illustrate the absurd. And we really need to take the fight to these people with this. I don't know how we can turn stupidity in on itself, kind of like the guy who declared himself to be a female when in custody of his own kids. We need to do something to show these people how ridiculously stupid they are, and that idea will have to come. But yeah, no, this is there is nowhere that can't be anymore. Oklahoma used to be this quiet place where you could retire and be around people who had some common sense. Now this wokeism is even infusing itself in our community, and it just goes to show there's no more luxury just sitting back and not doing stuff anymore.
Of the sideline.
Absolutely.
The days of the sideline and just watching the game are over. And that's why you see just gigantic political participation now, where there used to be absolutely no one show up at a school board or city council meeting. Now they're packed because people realize that these small little committees, agencies, town councils, that we by and large ignore are in charge of millions and millions of dollars. And your jaw will drop when you see, how it's spent.
Absolutely.
The city of Edmond is exploding its DEI program. We're partnering with the Chamber of Commerce to implement these diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. The Chamber has since bowed out, but the city is still fully on board. They have a whole office. They're looking to hire a chairman. Did we talk about this a couple weeks ago?
We did week
remember.
before last, but I think it's good to bring it back up because so many people that we know, there's constituents that, we've talked to that live in Edmond. They had no idea that any of this stuff. They're like, what's a DEI? What's DEI? What's all no clue. Living in Edmond, have no clue that this is happening, and like you said, it's really it's concerning because we're watching people at the local level that's handling all this stuff. It's kind of like when COVID hit. Everyone knew who their mayor was about after a year of COVID because all of a sudden it was like, we discovered who has power, and we didn't know they had that kind of power, and we didn't know that they could use that kind of money, and we didn't know they could do this and do that. Everyone knew that year who their mayor was because no one paid attention until everything hit the fan. I think it's kind of like the same thing.
And while the good people sitting here oblivious to stupidity because they've been living common sense lives forever, the people who want to abuse this, people who want to use this to take control and to enact they're going to just keep running this ball full forward at full speed, cover as much ground with as possible, and to occupy as much territory as possible, and that's ground we're going to have to win back on Main Street. So
absolutely.
I'm sorry to hear.
No apologies necessary, Daryl. You make an outstanding point there. It's it's
in Edmond. I hope they consider an Asian Pacific Islander like me.
Or a black woman like me, because I can definitely pretend to be woke for a while.
I did one of those DNA tests, and I'm 3% European Jew.
Interesting.
So does that make me a minority? Am I crossed identical? Oh, okay. Well,
great segue into our next story.
That's a great segue. I think what would have been maybe a better segue while we were talking about education was to then go to Ryan Walters. But let's save the best for last. Instead, talk about the Ukraine military.
Yes.
Going to be training at Fort Sill in Oklahoma. Now, I have no military experience. I can't speak to this. Did you serve, Janelle?
No, my husband did, obviously, but not me. No.
Daryl?
Daryl, you want to give us some
The
backstory?
last man standing.
Yeah, I'm surprised you were able to dig that out of my biography. Yeah, so um, so there's the guys and gals, the men and women at Fort Sill. One of the units at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, uh, operates and maintains the Patriot missile system, which people paying attention to national headlines might have noticed uh, Joseph Biden has promised a whole bunch of these Patriot missile systems to Ukraine. Now, in order to prevent an incident like I'm old enough to remember when the Ukraine army accidentally launched a missile into neighboring Poland and dang near dragged us all into World War III. Um, in order to prevent another incident like that, it's kind of important to have the troops make sure that the training on these high tech systems is current and there's some idiosyncrasies to every platform. Now, Nathan Dahm, I would say the best
Wait, well, hold on, Daryl. I think we
senator in
lost your
Oklahoma
audio there for a
has
second.
post.
At least I didn't hear you in my headphone. Can
Oh,
you
I'm
say
sorry to hear that.
can you say that one more time?
I'll back that up a little bit. I think I dropped off right about the point I said where Senator Nathan Dahm, the best dang senator in the state of Oklahoma, has proposed some legislation that would stop us from hosting foreign troops. And this is a bit of a sticky way to navigate because as the military superpower of Earth, the United States trains and hosts training events for all sorts of performance partners. And so carte blanche cutting that off may be a difficult bite to chew. This legislation survive the entire process at our state capitol, which is both nebulous and riddled with hurdles of its own. So whether this bill passes or not, it's going to take. Meanwhile, we're still going to be hosting and training troops, whether we want or not. But this makes Oklahoma a legitimate military target for the Russian military.
Think about it. You're wondering about how tax dollars are being used. Is our tax dollars being used to bring them here? Is there extra money on top of that that's being used for that? I mean, the left refuses to even acknowledge that we're sending billions upon billions upon billions of dollars to Ukraine, and no one actually really knows where it's going. How many bills have there been that they've stuck money in there for Ukraine? I can't remember. It's like two or three at this point.
I've lost count.
I know I've lost count. Right? It's just unreal.
Well, in any U.S. foreign aid, what level of accountability do we expect once it reaches its destination?
Right.
I really don't know. And I don't know enough about Ukrainian foreign politics or Zelensky to know how corrupt the military is there, who's skimming off the top and redirecting. But Daryl, you do know. Tell us, give us some insight into the challenges Ukraine is facing and why the United States is so heavily vested in seeing Putin stopped at the border.
Well, all cards on the table. The United States is first and foremost vested in supporting the Ukraine military because years ago, back in 2015, Lindsey Graham and John McCain traveled to Ukraine and promised their military that if they had to fight with Russia, that we would get back. So that's why we're so vested in keeping ourselves supportive of Ukraine. Is there are legacy politicians in D.C. who have received large sums of money from Ukraine, much of it funneled through Hunter Biden's checking account, to buy the influence and patronage of the United States. Now, Ukraine, prior to Russia's invasion, was cited by the international community as the most corrupt government in the West and was competing with Zimbabwe for most corrupt government on earth. Then Russia invades, and all of a sudden, we care about their border more than we do our own and start sending billions of unaccounted for dollars cash and military support, equipment aid to help them with the fight. Now, I believe wholeheartedly that the United States and the rest of the West has a humanitarian objective here, that we have a a humanitarian imperative. We should definitely be sending medical supplies, food, and non-kinetic relief to the Ukraine. And if Ukraine wants to purchase weapon systems from us on promise of payment later, then maybe we could extend credit, and as nations do in these conflicts. But to just start gifting them and start openly military supporting them with a fight with Russia opens up the possibility of us becoming one party of a multilateral military against Russia. At some point, we stop just using Ukraine as a pass through and it's just straight up Americans fighting Russians in Ukraine. And that becomes problematic from a strategic perspective. So we need to be very careful with how we manage this problem. And a lot of this was exacerbated months ago when Joseph Biden told the world, he got on camera and told the world that this is the red line, and as long as Russia doesn't cross it, you're not going to get involved.
Mm.
I mean, that's not a good strategic move. That's like playing poker, but you're showing everybody else the face of your cards instead of the back. You know, that's just
Mm-hmm.
not a smart way to fight a war. And so now we're in this situation where it's almost damned if you do, damned if you don't. We've committed to it to a certain point. We have to figure out exactly what victory looks like and what our hard lines are for exit on this. And some with more than 3 functioning brain cells and a clue needs to do that, and they need to do it quick.
So, how do you see this conflict playing out?
I see this conflict playing out with Russia solidifying the ground that they own right now. Remember, the further west Russia can move its functional border through this region, because of the terrain and everything, they're looking at the map sideways. Okay, we're all looking at a very different map than people in Moscow are. The further west they can push their functional border through this region, the smaller their border becomes, and the more they can defend themselves from the perceived aggression of Western European nations. The Russian people operate under a mindset, it's an assumption that at some point NATO is going to come across that border. They're just going to do it. They believe we are going to do that, and that's a long-term objective of ours. So it is a long-term strategic objective of Moscow to push that border as far west as possible to shrink it down from many hundreds of miles wide, a few hundreds of miles wide, so that they can more accurately focus their forces. That's from the tactical battlefield perspective. Ukraine is home to a quarter of the world's population, a significant amount of oil, natural gas, high tech metals as well that can be mined out and used to fuel Russian industry and to bring Russia into a more provider status on the techno-industrial front for the 21st century, as well as one quarter of the world's population. Remember, every nation has to answer the question, how are we going to feed our people? Finally, I think Russia knows that its industry is fueled largely by its oil and natural gas exports to Europe. And if Russia can continue to put itself in the position of dominance to provide if they can control the ground, then they control the sea as well. And nations like Norway have begun pumping natural gas out of the sea from under the sea, under the ocean, and started to provide that to Europe, threatening Russia's economic standings. This is an economic war. This is a social war. This is a war of many different fronts that need to be addressed, and it's been ignored or played by people in DC for far too long. There are people in Washington, D.C. who have been profiting through Ukraine for years. Now things have gotten kinetic and nobody knows what to do, partly because there are also some of those in Washington, D.C. who, it seems, are also taking money from Russia through maybe Hunter Biden's checking account as well.
Okay, so
So they go ahead.
Okay, well, I had one more. Miles is telling me to wrap it up. So give me like a 20-second answer, okay? If Putin hadn't launched the invasion, could he have worked the moral high ground over Zelensky?
No.
No?
Zelensky has enough domestic problems that it would have been an interesting play to try. But at the end of the day, Vladimir Putin is still Vladimir Putin and can't hold the moral high ground on anybody except maybe Hillary Clinton.
Okay, fair enough. Should Oklahomans be in any way concerned about foreign troops training here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
Why?
Okay, Ukraine, again, is one of Eastern Europe's major human trafficking nexuses for a reason, and that's because the people there know how to do the work. Furthermore, the same way that our troops engage Al Qaeda in Yemen and in other battlefronts away from Afghanistan and Iraq, when you train foreign troops, you make yourself a legitimate military target. And the Russian military has a history of chasing its adversaries well beyond borders and geographic boundaries. This makes Oklahoma a legitimate military target for Russian troops. I don't want to see Spetsnaz running down the streets, nor do I want to see Ukrainian women being trafficked into our streets by some of these troops. There's a whole lot of problems that come with this, other than just, I don't believe we should have any more support to Ukraine, which is also a playing factor.
Okay. All right. Very insightful, Daryl. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Do we move on to Ryan Walters, or shall we talk about the classified documents found in President Biden's garage?
I vote Ryan Walters.
Let's go.
Second.
All right, lead us off there, Janelle.
So we've been talking about Ryan Walters quite a bit here in the last couple of weeks, and
Our new state school
yes,
superintendent.
Yes, and won fairly well in the election. He's done a couple of things that people have deemed controversial. The last time that we talked about the Santa Claus situation, whether or not he was to gain some traction from that, we don't know, but now the question comes because education is like a super hot button issue, particularly right now in the state of Oklahoma. It is across the nation, but it's all eyes are on Ryan Walters right now.
Right. Well, yeah, it's over half our state budget.
Yeah, exactly. So now there's the question of, okay, well, what was it that you guys said before we started? Are we getting the superintendent that we want or that we need? And that is the begging question.
Yeah, or I think it was what should we expect from Ryan Walters versus what do we want from Ryan Walters?
Absolutely.
All right, Daryl. Daryl,
Well,
I'm just letting you know that you've already talked enough and we're not calling on you.
I want to hear somebody else's voice.
Janelle, your take, because you have school.
One of those things where now I know some people personally that are, although they are glad that Ryan Walters won his election, some people though are concerned because there are aspects of his platform that people disagree with. Some people are very highly against the voucher situation. They don't want to give government control when it comes to private education, or when it comes to charter schools or things like that, which I totally get. I've heard both arguments on both sides of that. I know some people that like, his platform, but have concerns about maybe a handful of things. And then you have just the entire, just far left element. And yes, Oklahoma, there is a far left element in our state. I just, again, as we have all stated several times, we are not living in a red state where everything is happy and we're all good. And no, it's not like that. Like, we have people that have been descending on education and all of our society here in Oklahoma. They've been descending on this and setting up their own little beachheads this entire time. Several years this has all been happening. And just because you go to the ballot box and you vote a certain way doesn't mean that reflects your entire state. It doesn't mean that the woke element is not here and that they haven't been incredibly organized and incredibly busy, especially in education. You can go to some of these groups on social media alone that are, teachers, that are different people that are right here in Oklahoma, and the stuff that they post is like unreal. These are teachers. Like, these are people all across our state that are very passionate about Ryan Walters not being in there. I can tell you
Yeah,
that.
and Oklahoma, of course, has had
Yeah.
the distinction of lives of TikTok several times with our teachers.
Right. Yeah.
I really don't know enough about the hierarchy, how much control the superintendent has over school boards. I imagine very little, if any.
Yeah.
And really, the school boards is where the problems are.
Yeah.
So I'd
I
say,
think there's
first
an
of all,
avenue in
we should
there.
probably manage our expectations. Go ahead, Daryl.
There's an avenue in there, though, because remember, your school board, I didn't know this until I started going to school board meetings, but your school board is required to have certain credentialing by the state Department of Education. So I think that he's got a way to influence how those school boards do their business and what's going to be tolerated and what isn't.
Interesting.
That some people aren't connected to, as you put it earlier. I love that, the education industrial complex might not be aware of. I'm stealing that, by the way, Spino. I do the thing with the words that says the stuff.
I've already
but I know good
copyrighted
work
it.
when I hear it.
You're going to have to get $3 each time you say it.
I'll find a way around it, I'm sure. But no. So I think that there's a way that Ryan Walters can influence these school boards, even though he's in OKC and they're in their sometimes small town. And I think that's why the leftists fought so hard to keep control of this state, and why they melted down so much every time they see him, basically, which of course makes me happy. No, I think we will see a way that he can influence things down.
Well, I think that as far as just my own personal opinion, as far as what the need versus want is that, number one, we know that, one of the things with Joy Hoffmeister that was really damaging to education was that she essentially kind of opened the floodgates, to a lot of what we see right now. And this is after her lying, and even on her own campaign trail.
She rolled out the red carpet for critical race theory.
Oh, she totally did. Totally
and
did.
social emotional learning. It
Totally
was
did.
all over the Super's website.
Yep.
But go ahead.
Yep. But, even from the very beginning, that's what, kind of is funny is that, my husband and I, we wrote about, Hoffmeister years ago, even when she was running for state superintendent. And I remember that we were very polite about it, but we essentially said that she was a liar. And we said, she's running on, I'm getting rid of Common Core, and I stand with the parents that don't want this in our schools and blah, blah, blah. She attacked her, opponent at the time and said that she was for Common Core when just a whole mess. But then she turned right around and did the very thing that everyone said that she wasn't going to do. And she went and opened up all doors far worse than Common Core, than what she ushered in. Not only that, but she had an army of, if you could, and this is nothing against teachers, but we need teachers and less activists. But she had a whole army of activists behind her this entire time. And now you have parents that don't understand why things are being taught in Oklahoma that are being taught in California. And they don't understand why there's social emotional learning, and they don't understand DEI, and we don't know how this got here. And I'm thinking, whatever starts at the top is going to trickle all the way down to the bottom.
Absolutely.
And so that's just my thoughts on it. I think that I think that Ryan Walters has an opportunity to really put a close to that door. He has an opportunity to at least begin that process and begin to look deeper into education and go, okay, we have to go back to the root of where this started and start dealing with it. Now, mind you, that's a whole other conversation because, no, it's not as simple as it sounds now that it's been implemented, and probably a lot deeper than we think it has been.
Well, I think even a modicum of focus on academic achievement might be in order.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I see very little of that prioritized now.
Yeah.
Test scores are plummeting.
They're
in
awful.
Oklahoma, especially after the pandemic and all those kids got screwed out of a year and a half of school.
Yeah.
Test scores are down. Where's the money being invested?
Yep.
In these stupid programs.
Yep.
The DEI equity program.
The made-up offices that are popping up everywhere.
And they're so top-heavy. It's ridiculous. God, someone's talking about the ratio of teachers to administrators, and I don't have my numbers right. Don't quote me. But it was something like 50 years ago. It was like one administrator for every 15 teachers or 30 teachers or whatever.
Yeah.
And like now it's 1 in 6. It's just the number of administrators in these imaginary roles,
Yeah.
have just exploded. And that's why, Daryl, I think it's aptly named the educational industrial complex.
Yeah.
Is that there
That's
are people.
that's a great term that's going to somehow
Yeah.
appear in my next book.
Especially, I mean, you see it in play at the Capitol. You
Yeah.
see lobbyists make money
Yeah.
from both sides of the fight.
Yeah.
If our education issues get resolved, the well dries up for them. They make money from the fight. And so it's in their interest to perpetuate the fight. And I think that's a huge reason why very few things get solved. Now, Ryan Walters, with an overwhelming mandate that he got after this election, should be able to come in and start kicking some asses, right? Demanding accountability for, saying, you know what, we're not funding any more of these DEI offices.
Right. Yeah.
We're not
Absolutely.
supporting any more of these clubs that tackle social issues. But forget about it. We'll have that Latin club and the baseball team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like our education, just the basics of education has been so overtaken to where now it's like, okay, well, the kids can't read, but they know about, equity and inclusion, and they know, that I'm the reason why this person can't get ahead in life. And it's like there's been such a flip in education right now where it's not even about test scores anymore. It's not about just basic education anymore. I'm thinking, you guys have money for all this stuff, but you've got literally children that are like, what is it? I think the last reports showed that, I forgot the percentage of children that weren't reading at a grade level. And it was like
Almost 90.
Yeah, it was it was awful. And you're like, but what is our money going to if this is what it looks like at that level, but you've got all these other programs that are going on?
And to me,
consistently well over 80% of students over the third grade in the state of Oklahoma cannot read on grade level. Consistently 1/3 of graduating seniors from Oklahoma public schools are functionally illiterate.
Wow.
And yet the schools want to put money into making sure that the kids feel gender enough, or
That's
the
good.
kids are able to feel good about themselves. You know what would make me feel really good about myself is my Oklahoma high school diploma somehow made people confident in hiring me into a job that would allow me to actually work, learn skills, and pay bills. That would make me feel really awesome.
Or being able to read.
But
Yeah.
I mean, it only makes sense that the educational system, given the performance that they've provided, no wonder they don't want to focus on outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Since we moved to Oklahoma in 2001, I have witnessed 3 huge tax hikes specifically earmarked for education: the lottery, the $1.50 cigarette tax, and then the one like in 2018, the teacher raise thing, right? That tax hike. This will solve our problem. This will solve our problem. This will solve our problem. And over those 22 years that we've lived here, test scores across the board have plummeted. So to make the case that more money will get you better outcomes, how anyone buys into that at this point is beyond me.
Yeah.
That's what Ryan Walters should focus on.
Yeah.
He should get in there and start cracking skulls, especially again, if he has the authority on the university level
Right?
to go shake them down and figure out, why have college tuitions gone up 600% disproportionately to inflation
Yeah.
over the last 30 years?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Look, I'd even go so far as to say if they would just spend the money on the right stuff, I would continue to happily give them tax money, right?
Right.
If they were spending tax money wisely, then I would be pretty okay with giving them more. I want teachers to be paid more. Of course, we set the minimum teacher wage at the state level. It's the schools that refuse to pay more than that, not the state. The schools are paying every high school now pretty much has to have a superintendent and a principal and a team of vice principals. We were going to school, a superintendent was a regional job. Everybody in that area, all the schools in that area fell under that one superintendent, not everybody in this building, and each one of those superintendents is pulling in a comfortable six-figure salary. Dr. Deborah Gist, the bully in chief and superintendent of Tulsa Public Schools, makes close to $500,000 a year off the taxpayers. That's a lot of money. I could field a lot of teachers for that, or I could spread some of that love amongst some teachers.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Okay, but that's a two-sided coin. So the highest paid public employee in the state of Oklahoma is the superintendent of Oklahoma City Public Schools. I think it's over $400,000 a year. But when you break down the cost per pupil that they're being paid, and then compare it to smaller school districts. Okay, so like the superintendent of Oklahoma City Schools, while the highest paid person around, I think averages like $7 to $8 per year per student. Whereas you get out to places like Swink and these tiny little school districts, you have superintendents making like $5,000 a year per student. That's an exaggeration, but I mean it's ridiculous high, like up to $400 or $500 a year per student. And I think, I don't know what the answer is, but I can certainly point out the problem, and that is when you have 500 plus school districts in a state that has a population of 4 million, you're top heavy on administration.
Absolutely. I think it kind of reminds me too of a little bit about kind of like how California, they continue to just pour money. I think it's like every 10 years they're pouring money into their, their homeless problem that they have. But the homeless problem continues to grow. It's not going away. Skid Row grows. We've done stories over this in the past probably 5 years. And what was crazy is that, I mean, it was like millions upon millions of dollars they were pouring into this problem. And yet the problem just grew like exponentially after all this money had been put in, millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, where'd that money go? Glad we could, put a stop to the problem, even though it grew.
Well, see, and is there anything stupider than spending money you do not have to get outcomes you do not want?
Yeah.
Well, and
how is that a difficult
spending
formula to figure out? I'm not saying destroy the education system, but for God's sake, I think we're in consensus here that it's broken.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, and the runaway spending starts generating cottage industries to leech off of it too.
Sure.
You talk about the homeless spending. A lot of that money doesn't go to homeless Joe so that he can smoke better crack. A lot of that money ends up going to nonprofits and the service organizations who set up self-licking lollipop of, oh, we're going to get together, we're going to talk about helping these people. We're not actually going to do anything about it. Just going to get together, we're going to talk about it, and then we're going to schedule the next meeting and we're going to get together and talk about it again. And we're just going to keep doing that over and over and over again.
And
if self-funded cottage industry.
Daryl, if I can interject here, just to make it clear to everyone, just because an institution has nonprofit status does not mean that people aren't making money.
Absolutely.
Oh, no.
Absolutely.
Average director salary for a nonprofit in the state of Oklahoma is $120,000. There's money going in. And there's money going to people's pockets. It's just, the margins and where all the money have to be buried. And just like anything else, sometimes the nonprofit ends up buying a new car or two so people can drive around to the meetings and stuff. You look at schools, look at what textbooks cost. One of my former professors has actually met occasionally, and he suggested that we need to write a new logic textbook. And the amount of money that is just in the textbook racket is staggering. And that money's got to come from somewhere.
I used to work with a woman named Britton Follett of Follett Books. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but if you've ever had a textbook, it's either McGraw-Hill or Follett Books. We, because she worked in news at the time. Now she works in publishing, so she probably wouldn't share this now. But yeah, she said a huge part of the business model is you make a new edition of the book every year. And it might be a change of literally 3 paragraphs.
Is that what that is?
But this, new edition makes last year's obsolete, so people can't sell the.
I've always wondered
books.
about
you
that.
You have to buy a new one.
Interesting.
It is a racket.
My daughter's school, my daughter goes to private school, and her school gets a lot of first edition textbooks. The teachers actually keep a log of just every time the students catch a spelling error. And they turn those to the publisher at the end of the year so that the second edition can have fewer spelling errors that slipped past children.
That's actually a good exercise for the kids. When you think about it, as long as there's a reward, whoever gets the most typos by the end of the week gets their own self-licking lollipop. All right, we're getting the wrap up from Miles. Is that the end of the show, or is that are we moving on to a new topic?
Well, we can talk about. Well, this would be a pretty easy topic, but we can talk about Biden's classified files that were found apparently in his garage.
Well, hold on. Let's backtrack a little and
Okay.
talk about this Keenan Anderson story.
Oh, do you want to? Oh, okay. I told you. All right. I would just like to go on the record.
Well, you
and say
said it
that
would
I
upset
did
you, so.
Not want to talk about the Keenan Anderson.
Was he one of the brothers on In Living Color?
No.
Keenan Ivory
Thank you. That's who I'm thinking of. Go ahead.
is hilarious, by the way. I love them all.
I'm sorry. Oh my god.
And by them, I mean the Wayans family, not them
Yeah. Yeah.
in an insensitive
So
way.
give us some
Too
background.
late,
Janelle.
Daryl. Canceled.
I'm going to lose my badge.
All right. So Keenan Anderson. So this is a situation. Now, mind you, this is an ongoing story. This happened, I believe, yesterday. And the basis of the story, very quickly, Keenan Anderson, who happens to be the cousin of one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter, he was stopped by police in L.A. Mind you, a hit and run had been reported just moments prior to police getting there and, being able to talk to Keenan Anderson. And apparently there was an Uber driver who confirmed that after the hit and run, Keenan Anderson was involved in the hit and run. He, proceeded to get out of his car and tried to take the Uber's car, and so that he could get out of the situation that he was in.
Well, but not like dial up an Uber.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Carjack an
He
Uber
tried
driver.
to
Carjacking is
take
the
over an
technical
actual Uber. Yeah, he tried to take the man's car from him
yes.
so that he could get the heck out of there because he knew he was probably going to be in trouble. So
Now Andrew,
Well,
it's only
expect so.
common hearing if we do it at sea. That's a nautical term. Otherwise, you're just getting carjacked.
he's like, you're just getting carjacked.
Noted.
But anyways, police were able to
Sailor.
find him pretty quickly, blah, blah, blah. And really the basis of this is that we're getting the same story, right? Media saying, oh my gosh, another black man has been killed by law enforcement. And, so she's put out this statement, it's a very big deal, very emotional. Number one, I just want to say that obviously this is not a celebration of someone losing their life. Obviously, we're sad for this young man because it's very obvious that there was something very wrong when you see this encounter that he had with law enforcement. But he didn't, pretty much at all comply with anything that law enforcement was asking him to do. My husband and I watched the footage. We watched all the footage, and it went on and on and on. Now, mind you, I would just like to say that in the footage, it was like, some law enforcement may not have been as patient as this particular officer was. I mean, he was speaking incredibly kind to him. He was you could tell he was trying to figure out what was going on. He was trying to ask him questions, de-escalate the situation. Keenan Anderson proceeded to say that someone's after me. They're trying to kill me. He's pointing down the street, probably trying to, at that point, come up with some reason why, there was a hit and run, he was involved and had to...
Or he's bipolar.
Exactly. Or it could have been the marijuana and the cocaine that was found in his system. And so...
Possibly.
That's known to invoke a little
Possibly.
paranoia.
Yeah,
Could have
little
been
bit.
self-medicating the
Yeah.
schizophrenia. Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? But
Leave every option on the table here.
he did not comply with law enforcement at all the entire time. Now, mind you, this went on before they even got to the tasing, before they got to any of that. This went on forever. And to the point to where, He was practically walking away from law enforcement like 2 different times, just walking away. And they still hadn't done anything. No one pulled their gun out. No one tased him. No one did anything. It was like this went on. And so finally they got him, down to the ground. They tased him once. It was like nothing was doing anything. He was still completely non-compliant the entire time.
Okay. So, which immediately tells you drugs.
Yeah.
Drugs.
Absolutely.
It's right straight out of the gate. Go ahead.
Absolutely. But they're saying that, it's like, oh, well, he was killed by law enforcement. Mind you, he wasn't killed, okay, like, a cop pulled a gun on him and shot him. It was nothing like that. They're saying that because of the tasing, that he was tased 4 times, they're saying that that's what caused him to go into cardiac arrest, and essentially they killed him. But I just would like to point out also that the media is not showing the entire video. Obviously, they're showing the clip where he's down on the ground, he's being tased, and he's literally yelling, "Don't George Floyd me, you're going to kill me," whole 9 yards. So anyways, that's pretty much the basis of the story. It falls flat because the real intent behind Black Lives Matter has been so unveiled in this country that unfortunately now you see what they're trying to do because, this is going to be a paycheck for somebody, right? And it's sad that death of someone has to be...
I don't know if it's going to be, how big the paycheck will be.
I don't think it'll be big.
The sister wasted no time trying to cash in.
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
And of course, sympathy for her.
Absolutely. For her family, yeah.
It sounds like he was mentally ill.
Yeah.
Which is terribly sad.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have gotten better results if you've simply sent out a mental health negotiator, which Oklahoma is going to try soon instead of law enforcement.
Yeah.
Who knows? But if someone's already been in a hit and run, they're trying to flee, they're obviously a public safety threat. They're successful carjacking.
Yeah.
Was it successful or attempted, the carjacking?
Oh, it was definitely it was not successful because he ended up running away because I guess he was in a pretty public area.
He fled on foot?
Yeah.
So obviously the guy's a public safety threat.
Yeah.
The question is, when you have an institution like Black Lives Matter and Patrice Cullors, who doesn't believe police should exist at all in the first place, then why would anyone take seriously her criticisms of police?
Absolutely.
And like you said, I think that's been exposed over the last 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, you've got celebrities that are wanting their money back, at this point. They're just like, oh, okay, we've literally been scammed out of like billions of dollars. These people are, literally living, in mansions and they're paying their family members.
Give me money back or at least let me sublet the room in the mansion.
Something. I mean, so you can kind of tell that even what they're trying to build, this momentum they're trying to build in the media, it's not building like it used to. I mean, used to you would just have everybody just like, just flipping out. But you can tell there's a different tone with this one, in my opinion.
Okay, so here's the question. So clearly their credibility is just, tail spinning down, whatever. The question, which is good, but the question is, did they move the ball in a way that it can't be moved back?
That's a good question.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To make a very rough football analogy here, it's you look at like the 60s. If you look at it objectively, really the conservatives won the 60s. That socio-political upheaval, but out of that grew so many government programs and the birth of the stuff that we're seeing now that. Did conservatives really win? The liberals dived underground.
Yep.
They set up shop in universities.
Yep.
Whipped the next couple generations into shape to their liking. I was trying to make a really brilliant point here, and I can't remember what it was. I'm so lost in my outrage of the fraudulence of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did we stop your thought, Daryl? Go ahead.
No, Daryl, go ahead.
I just realized that I was stepping on somebody and thought I'd try to be courteous. So I think the point you made that I heard was and that I dig is that lost ground is hard to win back. And did Black Lives Matter change the way that we see the political dynamic in America? I think the answer is unfortunately yes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Well, I think that it's one of those things too, where, okay, for instance, a lot of the times on the left, when when political groups like Black Lives Matter are just so pushed, to the forefront. They're heavily funded, heavily supported. Even in major American corporations, totally funded. And then you see what happens where everything kind of hits the fan, and the lid gets blown off, and who they really are is discovered, even though it wasn't discovered by a lot of us because we already knew about it. But it's still one of those places where you're like, does this though? It can be damaging because everybody knows that police brutality is not like some myth out there. You know what I mean? It's like police brutality happens depending upon the person. It's not a black issue. It's not a white issue. It's not a Hispanic issue. It's not a German issue. It's a human issue. Any officer at any time can take power into their own hands and abuse that power. Everybody knows that.
It's like any industry.
Any industry.
There are bad
any
teachers.
industry.
There are bad doctors.
Exactly.
There are bad lawyers.
Exactly.
There are bad podcasters.
I don't
Not
know what
on
you're talking about, speed out.
Not here.
But they're out there, and I think that what these people don't understand, because they're looking to cash in, is that you're damaging, though, any platform, any real platform that you could possibly have. To stand up and say, hey, look, we are for defending anybody for that matter, no matter your race, no matter your color, no matter whatever. We can defend people being protected from things like police brutality. But to get, to cash in like this, you're totally just like wiping out any possible platform that you have, because now people don't believe you. And now people don't trust you. And now people don't want to listen to the media as much because they've watched you cash in on the deaths of other people when the story wasn't even correct the entire time. And now, mind you, I think some people obviously they're still in the Black Lives Matter game. You know what I mean? They're still very much involved. They're still very much believing all this stuff.
And I'm sure there are people who, if they could, would still donate money to Jim and Tammy Baker.
Right.
Some people refuse
Die
to
hard.
surrender their faith no matter how much evidence is thrown at them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the basis for me is that, it's been unfortunate to, watch everything that's played out, with Black Lives Matter. But, this still goes back to a place where, even with what our law enforcement have had to deal with, because this man, mind you, I don't know if I would have been as patient. Do you know what I mean? Like, this man was so kind. This police officer that dealt with Keenan Anderson. That's why I hate the media, because, well, not our media, but we hate mainstream media.
Legacy media.
Yeah, exactly.
Media.
The damn media.
Right? So
The
it's one of those
agenda
things.
mainstream network.
They paint the picture that, these murderous cops.
Oh, right.
And it's got this kind man trying to calm him down for 15 solid minutes, you know?
It was like Nicholas Sandman, the teenage kid with the MAGA hat in D.C.
Right.
With the drum thing, whatever. Yes, you can take any picture, snippet of video out of context and make it anything you want.
Nothing is as it's perceived.
But let's kind of tie that all in together with Black Lives Matter and with the abhorrent dereliction of duty of journalists in this country. Mm-hmm. That when you create a sacred cow like Black Lives Matter, or teachers, or any subject, I think Abraham Lincoln, you can't criticize that. It's a sacred cow. Mm-hmm. You are doing not only a disservice, it's inherently deceptive because you're stifling conversation. And if journalists have been doing their job from day one, investigating where this money was going, what the true intent was of the people in whose hands this money was,
absolutely,
it wouldn't have taken 3 years to lose credibility. It could have happened in 3 days.
Yep.
To that point,
complicity. I think, Andrew, part of it is just straight up fear. Can you find me one backbone in the damn media, in the DNC agenda mainstream networks, one person who has the chutzpah to stand up and say something is objectively right or wrong, or to ask a question whose answer might be uncomfortable? Because I can't.
Okay, so let me illustrate exactly what you're saying with this story, which I think we all know the story, but maybe not everyone in the audience does. So this should be informative as well as compelling. is that during the 2020 riots in Oklahoma City, remember there was a big rally at the state capitol, then there was a march downtown, and then that's when all hell broke loose and the riots started, like right around sundown, right? The rally at the Capitol and the subsequent march was consistently being described by all the local stations as peaceful, completely peaceful. It was peaceful until they got downtown. Well, we had video of a young man who was at the Black Lives Matter rally in support of the mantra that Black Lives Matter. He was wearing a MAGA hat. 5 guys beat the crap out of him for wearing a hat, all documented on video. I called up reporters at every single station in town and said, you guys keep saying this was completely peaceful. It's not. Here's the video. This guy's willing to talk to you. All 4 reporters who I talked to said, yes, that is a hell of a story on it. All 4 were shot down by their producers and their news directors. And consistently, the feedback that I got was, number 1, they don't want to talk against the rioters because they're the heroes / victims right now. The other was, and this is what blew me away, was that, well, if he went down there with that MAGA hat, he was just asking for it. Really? And
Funny,
so,
when I used to
and
say
so
that about
now,
girls with short skirts, that didn't fly.
right. So knowing that, they continued to say it was, and the words completely peaceful. And they knew it was a lie. And so if journalists were really doing the job that they once did, this wouldn't have been a problem that got to this point, and we wouldn't even know who Keenan Anderson is.
Exactly. I mean, and I just want to say for the record too that I don't think the American people fully understand how twisted the media. I mean, when it comes to at least 50 to 60% of the stories that were reported that had to do with law enforcement shooting a young black kid or shooting a young black man, I don't think we even want to even dive into how twisted and distorted the stories were. You never received the truth on that. You never received the full truth on any of those stories.
Well, then you compound something like that with like what happened in Oklahoma County, where you had 5 officers gunned down this kid, Stavian Rodriguez, who was in the middle of an armed robbery, came out from the store. 5 cops have guns pointed at him. Drop your weapon. He did. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. What did he do? He reached behind his back. All 5 cops opened fire, killed him, and now all 5 have been charged with what was initially first-degree murder, but is now second-degree murder in Oklahoma County. And so...
How many Oklahomans know about that?
And so... Wow. The problem is these fantasies in the media turn into tragedies in reality.
Yep.
That's how this plays out.
Yep.
Not to get too heavy on everyone on a Friday afternoon.
Well, and you know who the real victim in all
No,
of
it's
this
true.
is?
You?
Well, no, but the law enforcement, the
course.
cop who had to shoot
Yeah.
Keenan Anderson.
Yeah.
You know, he's got to deal with that.
Yeah.
Forever. That's not going to go away.
Yeah.
Unlike BLM's outrage, which will be assuaged with some paycheck, which will be paid to them to get to as a mea culpa, that officer who, you know, in this case or any other, those officers in Oklahoma County, every time a cop has to use deadly force, they have to live with that.
Absolutely.
And that's not an easy thing to
there's
live
trauma,
with. And there are a lot of officers who eat their own pistol after an incident like this. Now, I'm not a cop. I've never been a police officer, and you know, I'm handy capable, so I never can be a police officer. But my heart absolutely breaks, not only for the community, because now this engagement is going to color every law enforcement contact in that community now for a while. Every kid who sees a cop now is going to think, is he going to shoot me, or is she going to shoot me? And every cop involved in this scenario is now going to ask themselves, is it worth the risk of going through something like this again, just to go on another patrol? I mean, this has ripples that
it's a public safety issue.
It really
Yeah.
is when you think about it, because how many officers, I mean, it's being reported across the nation. There are officers that are literally being taken out because there's the, what do you call it? It's like there's the conflict that's now going on internally of whether or not they are to draw their weapon in certain situations because they're scared they're going to get canceled or they're going to get fired or something bad's going to happen because of what's been portrayed by the media. So in essence, they are now being shot and killed because they don't want to. I mean, can you imagine that? Like you're being that conflicted
Yeah, they're
inside.
risk averse.
Exactly.
Right, and so
Crazy.
let's say, this is another case in Oklahoma City where some lunatic had stabbed some people, shot with a taser, didn't respond, with bloody knife in hand, was running into a residential neighborhood. The cop shot him. The cop is charged with murder now.
That's unreal. Yeah.
It's not okay.
Here's the thing. Yeah, this guy is, again, obviously a clear and present public safety threat. He's attacked someone with a knife, and he's running into a residential area with the same knife. So let's say the cop didn't shoot him, and this kid kicks open the door of a single mom and 2 young kids and kills all 3. Is the cop responsible at that? Let's not put these guys in
Unfortunately, he's
impossible
not, because according to
Right.
Oklahoma statute, law enforcement has no duty to intervene. But I'll tell you what happens is anytime one of these officers sees these unnecessary, these spurious and frivolous disciplinary actions off of a clear case of necessary intervention like this, I'd love to see Governor Stitt come in and not only absolve the officer officially, give them a pardon, clemency, whatever legal term applies in the circumstances, but I'd love to see Kevin Stitt turn around and decommission the officers who charged them.
I think the only person who could do that would be the Attorney General, because the Attorney General has the authority to commandeer any case from a district attorney, captain, and then the Attorney General would have to dismiss the case with prejudice so that it could never be filed again. That's or our new Oklahoma County District Attorney Vicky Bahena could do that on her own.
Oh, well, there you go. That's what needs to happen.
Whether she will, who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe she just got in office. She might surprise us.
Oh man.
Which one's the holding my breath emoji?
The third from the left.
I don't know. Is there a holding your breath emoji? I didn't know that.
There's not. There should be.
Interesting.
Okay, guys, should we wrap up? Or
Yeah,
do
we
have
can
other
wrap up.
topics?
Yeah, we can.
Ready to
wrap
go?
up.
Come
Yeah.
on, it's almost 5:00.
Yeah. Why don't
right.
you wrap us up, Spino?
I was just about to ask you to wrap us up. There's all this pressure. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot tell you how much we appreciate you watching Project 46. What is this called? Wrap Up Podcast? The Project 46 podcast today. If I can just recap, number 1, the 3 of us are geniuses. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that we are offering solutions to the world's problems for free right here on Project
And we're doing it
46.
in like an hour or so.
Yes. You'd be a fool not to tune in and watch repeatedly. Tell your friends, and you know what? Sponsor Project 46, because we like to connect conservative-minded consumers with conservative-minded businesses.
Absolutely.
So hop on over to project46.com, which is spelled out.
You can also go to newsok46.
Oh, I was getting to that, Miles. Give me a minute.
Oh,
Okay, fine. Forget project46.com. The boss has spoken. Go to newsok46, number 4, number 6.com. And if you look where Daryl is pointing on the lower right-hand
Thank you,
corner of your screen, you'll see the website there, newsok46.com. And there you can see all our shows, plus a lot of great content, which you should constantly be tuning into because the legislative session will be starting before we know it. Okay, let's get out of here, guys. Janelle Batts with Red River TV and host of more shows than I can count. Daryl Simmons, Daily Dose of Daryl. Get your vitamin D 5 days a week, 6 a.m.
That's not vitamin D.
I'm Andrew Spino. I do a show called Special Assignment, so you want to tune into that as well. And all the great shows on Project 46. We'll see you back.